Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar The Last Airbender, a podcast where myself and a friend go through the world of Avatar, starting with The Last Airbender, which we did a couple of seasons ago, and now we're up to Korra Book 2, Episode 9? The Guide.
9, yeah.
I'm joined by the Last Airbender himself, Chris Billingham, who is new to the show. How you doing, Chris?
Yeah, I'm alright. I like to think of myself more as a co-host than a friend, but other than that, I think your introduction was fair.
The journey of this intro over the last season or two has been quite funny because there was a joke when I said co-host and you made fun of me for not saying friend. Then I did co-host and friend and you're like, that's the right order. And then I did friend co-host and now I've dropped co-host and you're still not happy. I've tried every combination, mate.
I jest. That's because you know what you've not said, Dan? You've not said family member.
Well, look forward to that in a future podcast, listeners.
Family.
I remember once. I remember when we first went to we went to New York. We went through customs, and they were very suspicious of us for some reason. And he was like, "What's your purpose of visiting?" All this stuff, and they really grilled us. And at one point, he goes, "What's your relation to each other?" And Nadia just says, "Family." And I look at her like, eyebrows furrowed, like, "There's something you're not telling me?" And apparently, she just thought like if you're together, you're by their legal definitions for when you're entering the country, that constitutes family. And I was like, no, I don't believe that's true. And so I explained to him we're a couple. And the guy was like, okay, and ticked a different box. It was weird.
Yeah, I don't think I'd even use that. Like, unless we had children. Do you know what I mean? And they were asking that for 3 or more. I'd say family, but even if that was me now, I'd just say husband and wife. I wouldn't say we're family.
Yeah, right, because it implies relate like a blood relationship, like a.
Unless we were on our way to Rio to pull off an amazing gravity-defying car heist. In which case, I'd be like, we're family. Like, but that's just to get in the mood.
And would you do that right before or right after drinking a Corona?
Always, just throughout the Corona,
right,
and then throughout the heist.
Anyway, we're here to talk about the guide, Chris, which is the episode, for those who don't remember, in which Korra reconnects with Tenzin and says, "Hey, guess what? Unalaq's up to some dodgy shit, dodgy rock. You knew it." And Tenzin's like, "I knew it." And she realizes that she can't get physically to the southern pole now because it's being controlled by her uncle. But she's realised she can get to it from the other side, from the spirit world side, without being prevented. So she wants Tenzin to guide her into the spirit world. It turns out he's never done it himself, despite his father's hopes for him that he would eventually achieve that. And it turns out Jinora has been sneakily hiding spirit bunnies and connections to the spirit world for quite some time, which we kind of got a hint of at the beginning of the season. She was the one who felt attached to the statue and all that stuff, so it's not like they didn't embed it. And then in the end, Tenzin has to let go of his own sort of pride and admit that his daughter has a better connection to the spirit world than him. And then they go through to the spirit world, which is where the episode kind of ends. We have a B plot in this episode, which is Mako trying to convince Asami and Bolin of Varric's evil plan. And then Varric, or according to Mako, frames him for being a member, working with the Triple Threat Triads and being actually the one that's behind everything. So that's what's going on in the world of Avatar, Chris. How did you feel about this particular episode?
It's difficult, Dan, because I don't want us to constantly be going back to the same things. But I really enjoyed the episode. I thought, in particular, I liked that they really gave time to Korra and I wanted to say Tenzin. Yeah, Tenzin, sorry. I really like that they spent time with Korra and Tenzin, in particular an apology. I thought that was needed and good to see.
Yes. I made notes about that scene, but they're not like valuable notes, but I wrote quite a bit about it, which is why I think like that scene kind of must have worked quite well, because you can tell I was more engaged with that scene looking through my notes.
Yeah, and I think the stuff with his daughter and like you say, like him admitting, no, okay, this isn't for me. It's not going to happen. All the stuff with the siblings, Boomy like adopting like a pet spirit, I thought was very funny.
Yes.
So I really enjoyed that, and actually I think there was a lot of really good stuff in it. I think it's a really strong episode. But as always, take a shot. It's just the pacing, man. Like you say, oh yeah, we've had hints of it. Yeah, we've had hints, but we've not like to suddenly see her just playing with a gang of spirit animals. I mean, obviously the big one. They're just back together. Like, okay, I really liked. I thought the kiss made sense. I wasn't bothered by the kiss last week because it was like, I think that kind of makes sense. He's in a weird place. She probably Asami never really got over the breakup. Cool, that kind of makes sense. He looked a bit, sketchy after it in a oh shit, should that have happened way. But now they're just a couple going out for dinner. Like, and then everyone fucking knows about it. It's so much so that the rumor mill has spread. Like, okay. Like, there's just a lot of just rushed stuff.
Well, can I just jump in on that point, actually? Because I actually think the pacing of the episode, in of itself, if that is genuinely your starting point, is fine. I think what's really weird about this episode is that it just feels like we missed an episode.
Absolutely, it does, yeah.
And so the actual episode, as a 22-minute piece of television, is actually one of the best paced we've had this series. It had a much better balance of its plot lines. So I didn't feel that, there's just too much stuff stuffed into this. I didn't feel that. What I did feel was, have I put the right episode on? Because you're right.
Yeah.
It is very sudden that Jinora has this connection. It is embedded, but it's not like fully there. It does feel like we jump from a kiss to that they're in a relationship and everyone knows about it. It does feel like, well, the one that most immediately struck me, because it's literally the first thing that happens in the episode. Oh yeah, Korra just shows up at Tenzin's. Now, again, they explain it. He had a whole itinerary. But we didn't see that journey. Remember in the Avatar world, Chris, when getting around meant getting around? Now, I know, would it have been entertaining to have an episode of Korra just, riding on a bison days? No, obviously not. But some sense of time passing would be nice, so that when she shows up, I'm like, oh yeah, time has passed. They haven't established much time has passed, so it feels sudden, even if my logical brain goes, well, we don't know how much time occurred. There's been a small time skip here, clearly. Okay, give me the sense that that's the case then. Don't make me puzzle that out by being confused if I missed an episode. But that is, for me, that's actually pretty much the only criticism I actually have of this episode. I actually really liked this one. I was very impressed by it, because I think the issues we've had in the other episodes, in terms of there was just too much plot and not enough time for the characters to get moments. They found a better balance here. It's not perfect. I wouldn't say, some of the dialogue maybe is slightly rushed, maybe not though. I felt this one was pretty well balanced. I really thought the pacing of the actual individual episode was good. We took a lot of time with Korra, we took a lot of time with Tenzin coming to terms with the situation. The B plot was sufficiently a B plot. It was like a little 3-act structure. Mako goes to Asami and Bolin, they don't believe him. Then Varric pulls him aside, vaguely threatening. Mako ignores that. Final act or beat of it is Varric's end game, which is he frames Mako then to keep him quiet. That's a pretty solid B plot. Makes perfect sense. They give it just enough time for it to be exciting, and the scene with Varric is menacing and funny all at once, which is what you want from Varric. I was pretty pleased with all of that, and I like the way that the Korra plot has kind of converged a bit now with the main, with what's happening with Tenzin, but also what's happening with Unalaq. We understand the goals and the stakes now. They're a lot clearer. It's so much this episode gets right, but you're absolutely right. Your main initial thought of, as a series, the pacing is a mess. And this episode really decided, because it feels like it jumps 2 weeks and doesn't give us context for that, or doesn't really help us. We work that out through feeling lost, not through the show going. Just so you know, we're this far in. So yeah, sorry, I feel like I ranted there.
No, it's fine, and I feel bad because I feel like we're having the same discussion every week, and for people that don't bump up against that, it's potentially really annoying. But I just that was my big thing. Like you, I really enjoyed the episode as an individual episode. But there were just these things where I was like, man, from a series point of view, the pacing, the fact that it feeling like we missed an episode is a great way of kind of explaining that. Yeah, bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is slightly different to the concerns we had for those 2 episodes, because really, this is only the 3rd episode that we've had like any sort of major criticism for, because we liked the two beginnings episodes. We liked the first couple of episodes of the series too. So really, we're talking about like the episodes just before beginning. So like the Sting and Peacekeepers, where it started to feel a bit like they were cramming too much in. They were having a blast through it. Maybe Civil Wars Part 2, like Civil Wars Part 2, Peacekeepers. That period. So like 3 episodes maybe, including this one now, 4 I guess. Where that was an issue, but I do think in this episode the issue is slightly different though. I do think it's more about that they just jumped them to a starting point, rather than that the episode itself was either poorly paced or overstuffed. Because I don't feel like this episode was overstuffed, like the previous ones have been.
No. The actual pacing of the individual episode was very strong.
Mm. And I thought the writing was a bit stronger this week as well, clearer. The characters had clearer intentions. It was all sort of laid out a bit better. I feel like this episode really did sort of, from a storytelling perspective, like sort of put the season back on the tracks. Basically, like I know where we're going now again. Whereas I feel like that era, that like middle portion of this season, just before the beginnings episodes, like Peacekeepers and stuff like that. Yeah, maybe not lost, but like just a sense of meandering, but also so much happening. It was just like I can't see the forest for the trees at this point. Yeah, Peacekeepers, the Sting, that kind of those episodes. So let's talk about the individual elements of this then. Break it down a little bit. First of all, I really like the choice to set this one at the Eastern Air Temple. We don't see that a huge amount in the show. It's where Appa was born. But it's not where Aang grew up. Aang obviously grew up in the Southern Air Temple, but it is where Appa went back to when he was lost and met Guru Patik, and then came back to Aang with the message. And then Aang went to the Eastern Air Temple to go through with Guru Patik and learn how to unblock his chakras. If you remember that episode, Chris, it was all about chakras.
I do indeed.
And also gross banana food, or whatever it was he was eating. It was like banana porridge or something. I can't remember what it was. I knew it involved banana.
I can't remember, but yeah.
So this is a really nice setting for the episode. I think it's a really fun idea. And if you're going to go spiritual, you go to like the place Guru Patik kind of looked after for that period of time. And I think really the star of this episode is Tenzin and Tenzin's story. How are you feeling about how they're handling him and Korra sort of reuniting, and the stuff with him and Jinora in this episode? Because he's involved in 2 quite serious character plots across this one, which is fairly impressive actually. That they both do his mending of his relationship with Korra and his acceptance of his shortcomings as a spiritual leader, and being replaced by his own daughter. They handle all of that in this episode, and it doesn't that element of it doesn't feel particularly rushed.
No, like I said earlier, I really enjoyed that element, because I think what's quite nice about it is, they come on screen and she explains what's going on. He sees it as an opportunity to, try and connect to the spirit world. And I'm sat there going, it'd be good to have an apology or like a moment between these two, and then we get it, and it's very heartfelt, and he reacts in a very Avatar, in a very Tenzin way. He appreciates the apology, he accepts it, he calmly moves on, and the only bit, and it's funny because The only bit of his story that at first I was like, huh, really? Was when he's like, I'm the leader and I will, or he doesn't say I'm the leader, but when he's like, I will take you to the spirit world. And I'm like, in my head going, I thought the whole plot was that you're not that connected to the spirit world. Like, why are you suddenly gonna do this? And then later on it's revealed that that's gumption. That he has never been to the spirit world. It doesn't not track with everything we've already seen. In fact, we recorded this very early. I apologise. In fact, it backs up what we've seen, because what we've seen is him going, no, I can do it, and he's still doing that. So I thought all of that stuff unfolded very well, and I really whilst at first I was momentarily like, hold on, this doesn't seem to fit. Actually, when you realise he's pretending, it really does fit. And not only do they do the two storylines you talked about, they managed to fit in some comedy with his siblings.
Well,
like,
yes, and not just comedy, but
perhaps
character building as well. I think that
Kaya,
Kaya,
perhaps you should stick with Tenzin World or whatever he says. I thought was very funny.
Yeah. We'll talk about the comedy, because this episode's actually got a bunch of corkers. But I thought what was really interesting about that, particularly, was that they used it for a character beat for Kaya. Kaya is the one who is observant enough to clock Jinora and what's going on with Jinora. Tenzin, maybe much like his father, a little absorbed in what he's up to with his mentee, spirit world-wise, to notice the other child. The same way that Kaya and Bumi accused Aang of ignoring them to some degree because they didn't hold the weight of a whole culture on their shoulders the way Tenzin did as an airbender. Kaya, wise and I guess maybe a people watcher, very much like her own mother, I suppose, in that she was very good at reading people. Kaya has clocked what's going on with Jinora long before Tenzin has. And while it's played as a joke in the moment of, Jinora, do you want to tell us about your friends? We've sussed this out, or I've sussed this out. I think it actually tells us a great deal about Kaya as a person, and it's such a small moment, and this is when the show is firing on all cylinders, when it's doing stuff like this, where it's like, that is both a plot point and a character beat neatly merged into one. Yeah. That's when the show doesn't feel like it's overstretching itself, and it doesn't feel like it's forcing anyone into any boxes. We haven't got sort of that old hand of the writer thing making it happen, and I think that's really neat. And you're right. The sibling stuff in this episode is really good too. Bumi obviously just being his usual comedic self. When we want to go to Tenzin World, we'll call you. Is great. But also, even Tenzin gets a really great comedic beat in this episode. There's a brilliant bit right in the beginning when Korra sort of shorthandedly explains all that she's been through, and it just sounds like nonsense when she sort of sums it up in that way. And he's like, I knew it! Which is just brilliant, because it's so Tenzin to pretend he knew all that, even though what she's saying is patently absurd. It is absolutely absurd that she was attacked by a spirit and all this jazz, and he's just like, I knew it, because she's literally gone I was attacked by a spirit, I met the first Avatar, all this stuff, and he's and his response is just knew it, which is so good. So there's a bunch of those. There's also some really good stuff with Bolin. Bolin gets a few good lines in. Even Varric in his intimidation scene is very funny. So the comedy is really good in this episode as well. This isn't a particularly action heavy episode though, is there? Is there any action in this episode at all?
No. No, literally none, really. But I didn't notice that watching. I noticed that on reflection, but it's interesting. Not when actually watching the episode.
It's almost as if, Chris, sometimes you need to just accept that your story doesn't need an action beat every episode. Because I don't know if you recall,
and they could have done
episodes this season. We felt the action beat. It was a bit do it properly or don't worry about it.
Yeah, they could have done one as well. But Marco getting arrested, they could have easily made that a fight. Made that overblown. He jumps out the window. It's a chase scene, and then he gets arrested. But it doesn't need it. The tension of that scene is what's happening, and them planting the evidence and all that sort of stuff.
So let's talk a little bit about Jinora then. So I know we've already sort of said that the Jinora situation is a bit odd in that we feel like we've skipped a beat. But how it's handled within the episode itself, I think, is one of my favourite elements of it. I think seeing Tenzin see something he's never seen in his own daughter, and having him go from, as you pointed out, that bravado early in the episode of, I'm a spiritual leader, I'm supposed to be a spiritual leader at the very least, you know, my dad trained me for this, I need to be good at this, it's important for my own sense of self almost, you know. And then taking a person who's in that situation and getting them from there to accepting that they may never visit the spirit world, they may never be that person, but maybe their daughter is, maybe their child is, you know, is a really, really cool little arc. And while I think in the past we've sort of said, you know, with these sorts of arcs, you need to sort of, why has the character changed their opinion? You need to sometimes demonstrate the why of it. I didn't feel the need for that here directly, other than Tenzin being irrational, strong-headed, like, you know, bravado almost, that we sort of talked about at the beginning, and then just like with the apology, once it came, it's almost like he didn't need to hear it. You know, because he is wise and he does understand. You know, he always knew that was his fate, and this was just about him learning to accept it. It didn't feel like I needed a story beat to force Tenzin to change that way, because as we said, it was bravado. It was never a real belief of his. I don't think he ever really believed he could get to the spirit world. You know? I think he was doing that to sort of gear himself up to try. You know, give himself self-confidence. No, I got this. And then there'll be other penny dropping. And I guess seeing Jinora interacting with spirits so easily maybe is part of it too. But I also like that they do give him something to do. He's not completely helpless in this episode either. You know, they do find a way for Tenzin's knowledge to assist them. When they find the location in which they're going to do the meditation and move to the spirit world, he realizes immediately he needs to do a whole process to cleanse the area because it's not currently suitable for it. And he does that, and it works. So, you know, it's not like Tenzin does nothing in the episode either. So, yeah, I really, really like the way they did that. And then his speech to Jinora at the end, you know, Tenzin says he trusts her and he's proud of her. And accepts that she can be the guide for Korra. Is like it's a brilliant scene, really, really good scene, really well written. Once again, I've just gone a big rant. Sorry.
No. I completely agree. I think, like you say, it all tracks, and I love the notion that maybe a part of him knew all along, but he didn't. You know, as you say, well, I don't think you said this, but he. You know, I love the stuff when he reveals that part of it is because he feels like a failure to his dad. You know, it's so heartbreaking and so real. And I think, you know, tracks with their feelings about Aang and stuff. And he's never got over the weight of what he feels. Mm-hmm. You know, he didn't deliver for Aang.
Yes. And rather than me, starting to ask you about what you thought on something and then ranting for 5 minutes myself, I'm actually going to ask you the question this time. So with the Tenzin stuff, you know, thoroughly explored, how did we feel about our B plot, the Mako stuff, the Varric stuff, as it played out across the episode?
Yeah, I thought, like you say, the Varric plot, where the Varric scene where because obviously there's two B plots as well. There's also the twins and Dodgy Rock. Sorry, that's Varric, isn't it? Sorry, there's the twins and Dodgy Rock, and then also the stuff involving who's the character who you love, who's, you know, a bit.
Varric. Yeah, Varric. Unalaq is Unalaq.
Oh, that is Varric.
Dodgy Rock is Unalaq.
Unalaq, sorry. Right.
Yeah. So the Varric plot is the B plot. I'm not sure I would call the Unalaq stuff a C plot. It's more of just like, it's two scenes, isn't it? It's just two scenes to sort of set up what they're up to in the meantime, I guess.
Yeah, I prefer to think of it as a C plot because I've complained a lot about this series showing us scenes from another thing because it feels like it should show us scenes from them, and I think it's so linked. Yeah, I don't know. Personally, I like to think of it as a C plot because I don't think it's as egregious as when they've done that in other episodes this season.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Well, because if memory serves, it's just two scenes, right? It's the scene where he's like, come on, kids, I think we can do this ourselves. We don't need the bloody Avatar. And then they go and do it, and then he sort of reveals his true colours and doesn't care so much for his son as he gets hurt. And then there's the final scene at the end when Vaatu says they sense the Korra has arrived in the spirit world, which is more of a next week, sort of a moment rather than a specific plot beat from this. And I really liked the scene where Unalaq showed his true colours to his children. I think that's a really powerful scene, considering how little build up and payout, like how much time it takes for the episode. It's a very, very small chunk of the episode. It does quite a lot with it.
Yeah, I thought it was typical villain stuff, but also very effective. When she's like, he needs a healer, and he's just ignoring them, and he's just like, he's so focused on what he's doing, he's literally ignoring and putting aside the needs of his own children. I thought that was very effective in terms of and kind of a really good way of most likely taking us from A to B.
Yeah, and I think it is a bit of a shorthand, right, to have the villain just like not give a shit about their kid over their goal, and that it's a trope. It's been used a lot. Like literally, they just did this in an episode of Star Trek Prodigy I watched 5 weeks ago before we did that Static episode, and where they had a villain who was presented with the option of saving their child or their goal, and they chose the goal, and it's often, very often, I'm not going to say where it goes here, but it's very often used to make the child turn to the side of the good guys. Certainly, sort of how minor spoilers certainly helped go in that direction for Prodigy. Do you have expectations for that here, or do you think they might curveball it?
Yeah. No, I'm assuming that's what's going to happen, and I'm fine. I'm fine with that. The idea of the twins teaming up with sporadic, kind of vaguely, maybe sort of team, or at least very much collective of characters, Avatar, is really exciting to me. I think that could be really funny. The scene of them suddenly appearing and Bolin being terrified and them just being matter of fact, like, no, we're good guys now. Like, we're on your side. Okay? Because I don't think the way they've characterized those characters, this isn't me saying they've characterized them bad at all. I think they've characterized them brilliantly. But they're very much, they have to be one side or the other. I don't think there's room. I don't think a storyline. One of the reasons I'm like, yeah, that'll probably happen, is because if the storyline is, they don't know what to do, I don't want to see that with those characters. Those characters aren't built for inner conflict the way they've been characterized so far, and I'm fine with that. I think they're brilliantly characterized. But what I'm saying is, does it seem right to you, the idea that we cut to an episode and he's getting healed and she's like, what do you think we should do? Do you think we should, Dad seems a bit dodgy, doesn't he? Like, no, they're just going to turn up and have already, do you know what I mean, made that decision.
Mm-hmm. And I think they've done enough to justify doing that without more explanation. I agree. Yeah, it's an interesting trope though, and it was a good shorthand to make this episode not feel over. One of the ways this episode didn't feel overstuffed was that it didn't need to do too much exploring on that front. It was like 2, maybe 3 scenes. It might be that there was 3 scenes. One scene where it's like, we're gonna go do the portal thing, then cut back to Korra and Co. Then they do the portal thing, cut back to Korra and Co. And then the final scene being the now Korra's here in the spirit world. Maybe it was 3 scenes, but that was it at most. And each scene was fairly short. Like in the grand scheme of this episode, it was very little real estate. But yeah,
for sure,
a good sequence nonetheless. I think gave us some good character stuff for them, considering how little time it had, and a good setup for like the threat now, because they're all they're all in the spirit world. Like, Korra's gone there, but she doesn't realise Unalaq, Dodgy Rock, as you've got loads you labelled on him, is waiting. So yeah,
and that is a great ending. That ending beat of, she's entered the spirit world. Like, and she's with Tenzin's like young child. Like, yeah, it's a very exciting cliffhanger for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about the Mako plot then, because I asked you about it. We ended up getting to be distracted by the C plot discussion. So how did you feel about the beyond the initial complaint, which I agree with, which is just they seem to be together now and time has passed and just, I guess, deal with it. Assuming that we've accepted that, How did you feel about how they handled Mako's ongoing troubles with Varric?
Yeah, I thought I do. I mean, it was a very real complaint about the relationship thing, but
yes, you're right. But but I agree with that, and we could retread it, but it is a factor. I understand, but there's not much more we can say on it other than that they should have done something in between to clarify where these characters were.
We wouldn't only be retreading it for this episode. We'd be retreading it basically for the show, because this comes up a lot. Because they do this a lot. And I don't like it. But
this show does not handle relationships well.
No. The actual Venic of it, and I thought again that really tracked it. I thought it was really interesting. The notion of, right, he's onto me, and he's so about what's best for him and the money and all of that stuff that he just doesn't even he's just like, well, presumably I could just get him on side by sort of blackmail and bribery. That's gonna work, surely. Because that's him, that's his character would go, okay, I'll join forces with the bad guy because it's going to be best for me and best for the people around me, sort of thing. I thought it was just a really fun idea that he would know this guy was after him, and the first port of call would be to try and recruit him. It says a lot about his bolshiness and his confidence and his arrogance.
Yeah.
And then, then just turning to, well, all right, we'll rig the system and frame him then. Again, seems very underhand, very in keeping with the character we've met.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's written so well. It's both funny and menacing. It's really, really well put together, because what he's saying is he's literally, I'll hire you and you can protect Bolin and Asami. And you could quite easily just read that as, no, I'm hiring you as a bodyguard. You can look after them for me because I'm on your side. The dialogue is written really well. I've got it up in front of me, actually. Because also they do that thing. They do this brilliant joke where when he first gets there, it's there's a lava floor thing, or the hot coals, and Mako's like, "Oh, you're going to torture me," and he's like, "Well, I'm not going to. The only thing I want to torture is this pesky foot fungus," which is really fun. Yeah. They do that, which is great, because it's that balance they always catch just right with Varric, isn't it? Which is where he's being funny, but he's also being menacing, because he just does what he wants.
Although as quick as it was, I don't think I needed to see animated foot fungus. You know what I mean?
That's fair. No, that's absolutely fair. So he's like, I can't remember exactly. I've got the transcript here. So it's the world is a dangerous place. That's exactly why I want to offer you a job in my security force. I have a job. We need you. Me, Asami, Bolin. We're all on the same team here. We want you to join us. You wouldn't want anything to happen to Asami, would you? I mean, I heard you and her were kind of an item again. Or what about your brother? He's like, what are you saying? He's like, I'm saying I want your help to protect them. Without you, who knows what could happen? That is such good. Look, it's not subtle. I want to make it clear. I'm not suggesting that's subtle dialogue. His meaning is clear, I feel. But what I liked about it was they didn't have him outright say it. They did it in a way that there's just enough deniability, which I really enjoyed, because that felt very Varric, in a court of law, no, I said I wanted to hire him to protect them. What is he talking about? Just enough deniability, but also written clearly enough that no younger person watching this would be confused.
But it's also that classic thing of, I really love it, and it's something we compliment shows on a lot when they do it. I really love it when, in this case, we have a villain being villainous, but you could also understand why someone would be charmed by him, and if they were in the room, would be like, oh, he's being nice, he's offering you a job. Do you know what I mean? Right. It's played so brilliantly where the audience knows, but you also aren't going... I think I talked about it the other week. It's that great joke in Endgame, isn't it? When the Hydra agents are there, and Ant-Man's just like, "How did you not know they were villains?"
Right?
Look at them.
Yeah.
And it's that when a show when a show does that thing, usually we do it when they talk about lying. When a character lies in such a way that you understand why the characters on the screen believe it, but you also, as an audience member, know they're lying. And it's kind of that is that with that dialogue.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's a scene that manages to be amusing and menacing all at once. And I still think Varric is the best character in this show because I just love, like, because he's not, I mean, you refer to him as a villain then. I still don't really see him as a villain. He is an antagonist in this sense. He has no... He gives no shits about their crusade. He has no shits about the spiritual whatever. He literally sees a profiteering opportunity. There's a war I can stoke and then sell them equipment. Both sides. I'm going to acquire a company that makes machines that can be used for warmongering, and I'm going to go poke a war. I'm going to poke two sides into a civil war, and then offer them equipment to blow each other away and sell it and profit. It's evil, yes, but he's not the villain. He's a does that make sense? Like he's just looking out for himself. He will always do whatever gives him the best opportunity. He's not got an ideology. He's not got a belief system beyond looking after himself, and that makes him so much more interesting than any other villain on a show like this usually is, or antagonist, as you would put it more, because he doesn't ideologically disagree with the Avatar or their friends. And honestly, if their position lined up with his, he'd help them. It's that simple. He would help them if it would lead to profit. That's so interesting compared to because shows like this always go down the light and the dark and the good and the bad and these polar opposites, and it's always ideological. It's always that way. And don't get me wrong, that's a great way to give me a compelling villain. Give me a villain with either an opposing ideology to the hero, or give me a villain with a beef with the hero, like a revenge story. One or the other is usually the way these shows go. So Varric is a real breath of fresh air in the world of Avatar as antagonists go, because his motives are just so different to anything we've seen before or since, if I'm being honest. There's no character quite like him, so I still think he's one of the best they've got. And again, the ability to be menacing and funny it cannot be understated as how good that is and how important that is. And then, of course, brilliantly voice acted. Like the guy doing his voice, whose voice I actually heard in another show recently, and I'm going to have to have a think. I think he was in Secrets of the Mogwai.
Was
the Varric voice actor? I think he was in Secrets of the Mogwai. I don't know if he was in more than one episode or not, but I'm sure he was. I'll look him up quickly. But yeah, let me see if I can find his name. John Michael Higgins. And he's brilliant. He's an absolute highlight of this season.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
He's been so good. Let me see if he's in. Oh yeah, I know this guy. Oh god, when I see him, I'm like, oh yeah, this actor. He's in tons of stuff. I know this face. He had a sitcom where he was like an aging newscaster. They were trying to work out, like, weasel out of a show.
Did he? Let me look him up. What was his name?
John Michael Higgins. But we watched it. We reviewed it for this podcast. It was called... What was it called? It was called, like... Oh, I can't remember. It was a news station, and there was like a young... It was called Great News.
Oh yeah, that was that show that like we never saw the second series of that show. But what was really odd is like the second series, they just randomly started, or they basically like Tina Fey was involved behind the scenes, and then the ratings were bad, and it was as if they went, right, Tina, you're gonna need to get in front of the camera. Like you're gonna see if we're gonna need to give this a boost.
Yeah. So he's that guy.
Yeah, he's been in loads of stuff.
Yeah, he's great. I love him. I can't see him having been in Thingy though. It's not in his IMDb. So maybe it's just a voice that was similar to his, and I assumed because I can't see him having been in done the voice work that I was thinking he did in Gremlins. So maybe not. Maybe it was just someone who sounded similar. So yeah, big fan. Really big fan of what they've done with Varric and in general, like this again, this episode is such a frustrating one because I think the overarching thing is what we were talking about right at the beginning, which is like it's such a shame that this episode felt like they did a cheeky time skip to get us into the position to do this episode. And the real shame of it is otherwise, I don't think there's much to complain about physically in this 22-minute piece of television.
No, I don't know.
And that actually makes it really, really hard to review because there's a big choice that was made as a series that I think is a problem for this episode, but on its own, it's great. Oh God, he was in Saved by the Bell. Sorry, I just realised he was the principal in the new Saved by the Bell.
Yes, that's how, because he's been in so much that I'm like, what am I specifically thinking of? And it's the principal from Saved by the Bell.
Because he's the one they then edit into all the past episodes of the show. So good. Todman, yeah, it's great. Sorry, ignore me. I just suddenly remembered what was the bigger thing he was in more recently that I knew him from. He's great. But yeah, so I think that is a shame that we have to hold that against this episode, and it does hurt this episode. Poor series choices hurt what is otherwise a really enjoyable piece of television.
They absolutely do, and it's a real shame. But as an episode, it's doing some really great stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. Are you how are you feeling about the series as a whole at this point? Are you concerned? Does this episode give you some hope? It's the writing the track a bit because this one was like a better episode than. And obviously, we're discluding the beginnings episodes because they were their own little thing. But from the rest of the season's perspective,
I'm enjoying it. Look, it's one of those things where, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but the stuff we're complaining about, I don't think would be an issue if we were watching the show normally. If I wasn't reviewing this for an hour and a half, well, not an hour and a half, but an hour to an hour.
Certainly not today, mate. We're headed to wrapping this up, and let me give you a little preview. There is basically no trivia for this episode, so
an hour minimum to an hour 10 on average, probably an hour 10, hour 15 on average. Like, if I was just watching through the show, dude, like most of this stuff wouldn't even enter my head. You know what I mean? I think I would probably notice I would notice some of the pacing stuff, like when it's like characters are suddenly U-turning. I would definitely be a bit like rolling my eyes at love triangle bullshit. But in general, there's a lot of great stuff here. I'd be enjoying it. Do you know what I mean? I would be. Is it? I don't know if I can honestly say it's as strong as the first season almost, but equally the first season got a lot of ticks for the nostalgia and just how great I thought some of the leaps and some of the bounds were and some of the big swings were, and I'm already used to the big swings this season. And I'm a big, and again, broken record. I'm sorry. But I'm a big. I like there being a team Avatar. It's one of the things from the first season, from the first show. It's one of the things from Avatar that I really liked, and I would want to see that element in this show. And this series in particular has really separated Team Avatar, and it's almost like it can't have more than one of them in the same room at the same time. And
yeah, they definitely made a deliberate choice there to differentiate. And I think you're right. Of all the different areas of the show where they've gone will be different from the original show, that's probably the least wise choice.
But for other people, that will be the Avatar was a bit more cultural in a way. Do you know what I mean? It explored other cultures within the context of that show more, and that might be someone's favorite thing, or the lack of technology. They might love the fact that there weren't cars, that there weren't airplanes, and there was a version of airplanes in Avatar, but you know what I mean. Like
they had blimps, didn't they? They didn't have planes, but they did have air transport. They had like blimps, I think.
Yeah, so I completely get. Do you know what I mean? I completely get that. That's their version. When I say one of the things I'm not too, in terms of the season, I'm really enjoying it. If I wasn't analysing it, I wouldn't be thinking about a lot of this stuff. But when I say the one thing I don't like about this season, the one thing I really have an issue with, aside from love triangle bullshit, is the lack of a team Avatar. That has a huge caveat of that is not a criticism of the show. That is not a overall kind of criticism of the show. Not that we're critics, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. That is a very much a personal thing. That is personal to
preference.
me. I really liked that. Yeah, it's a preference thing. I really liked that element of the original show. I'm purely talking from my own perspective. And I completely get that when I go, I really like the big swing of modernizing the world. Someone might go, well, hold on. The fact that the world wasn't modernized, that was my Team Avatar. That was my equivalent of Team Avatar. That's why I struggle with the show. I completely get that. Like, do you know what I mean? I think that would be, that's completely fair because it's a personal opinion. Of course it is.
We'll have to get you watching One Piece, Chris. It's an anime I've been actually. I never watched it. It's been on since like the 90s, and it was always one that was like on my list, but it got so long. It's over 1,000 episodes long, Chris. And I started watching it recently because I was just like, you know what? I just got through all of classic Star Trek and I'm moving my way through Next Generation. I made it a long-term project and accepted that, and I wasn't intimidated by the number of episodes, and I've had a really good time doing that. And I need to break up Star Trek, because if I keep watching just Star Trek on my commute, I'm going to go fucking nuts eventually. So I throw in One Piece as a fun thing to watch alongside it. We'll have to get you watching that, because I think, Chris, you quite enjoy that, because that is basically a show entirely about forming a sort of Team Avatar. That is the premise of the show. He's looking for a crew. So every sort of 4 or 5 episodes, he's like trying to convince someone to join his pirate crew, and then it's all about them as a team. Like, it's literally it's the premise of the show, really.
Sounds great.
You'd have a good time watching it. I'm enjoying it though. I must admit, as someone who's always been a bit skeptical, like, come on, Dragon Ball all the way. I've been quite enjoying One Piece. It's really fun, nice. And I know a lot of Steven Universe was inspired by One Piece. I know Rebecca Sugar's talked about liking One Piece quite a bit. Because we talked a lot about like how there are lots of anime references in Steven Universe, all from lots of different animes. But she's literally, I remember her in one of those podcasts for Steven Universe, like describing a scene from One Piece and how it made her feel, and then trying to recapture that or something. It was something to do with Luffy, the main character, like fighting someone, and it was like a big emotional moment. I haven't gotten to whatever that is yet, I don't think. But I remember that. I remember her talking about it and me feeling like, God, this One Piece sounds good. I think it's getting a live action remake this year. I think I saw that. I didn't watch the trailer, but I think I saw that pop up somewhere in a. I think it's another Netflix remake of an anime, because that went so well last time.
If memory serves, though,
we enjoyed it. It was Cowboy Bebop.
No, Cowboy Bebop we enjoyed, but we also enjoyed. I particularly really enjoyed
Death Note.
The one.
Yes.
Death Note, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't as fond of Death Note because I don't think the movie itself was fine. I just feel like because the TV show had a bigger canvas, it got to really dive into the intricacies and the interesting elements of that story. But from your perspective, as someone who's never seen Death Note, that was like, the best possible version of that story for you. Like, and I was like, I was really pleased you enjoyed it actually, because I remember being worried you wouldn't. But yeah, I didn't hate.
Yeah, but I think a big crux of my review was the main thing I enjoyed was the ideas. So I was fully accepting that actually,
right,
they were potentially executed better elsewhere.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that if I'm not sure whether Bianca has caught up, one of our long-time listeners and one of our members of our Discord. But if Bianca hears this, it will be anime podcast when. Because Bianca's been trying to get me to get you to watch an anime for a long time. A long time. Anime podcast, probably never, Bianca, because all anime seem to go on for 1,000 episodes, and it's going to be very hard to get Chris to get into one. He ain't exactly going to commit to One Piece, 1,060 episodes, and still going,
Yeah.
We'd never finish.
Yeah. I think I've already because the annoying thing, the annoying thing, and this is probably, a discussion for off air, but the annoying thing is I can't see a world where we stop wanting to do rewind reviews, and we're never going to want to just continuously do rewind reviews. So when Korra ends, we are probably unfortunately, because like the we're never going to stop doing nothing but static. Obviously, I don't think we're ever going to stop doing rewind reviews. But there reaches a point where logistics will get trickier for various reasons upcoming, and it's just like that slot in between rewind reviews where it's like, well, we probably want to do something. Probably won't want to just like take an 11-week break in between, or a 16-week break in between. So what happens? What do we do? And that has crossed my mind of like, well, we'll probably want to do something, but we'll probably not be able to do something. And I'm literally in my head going, is there a way we could create a genuine like 15-minute thing? Like, is there a way we could do something that is genuinely short? Probably isn't reviewing an anime show.
That's fair. But to be fair, when Korra ends, we do have then the live action show and all these new movies and series of Avatar that are coming out. So I'm wondering if it will still just be analysing Avatar, but we'll be looking at the newer stuff.
That's true.
There's a part of me that wonders if we'll be doing that, but I guess we'll have to wait and see, because it's going to really depend on when that stuff comes out in relation to what we're recording at the time and all that stuff. But yeah, you're right. There's a big old gap there. We'll see. Because I always think back to, Chris. I always think back to Fringe Observers and how somehow that was 40 minutes every week. Every week. 40 to 50 minutes every single week. Until the finale. How did we manage that?
Yeah.
How did we not go over?
Yeah.
So maybe we need to do something a bit more in that vein. Yeah, look, 48 minutes, 45 minutes, 49 minutes, 49 minutes, 51 minutes, 47 minutes, 46 minutes, 48 minutes, 50 minutes, 47 minutes, 49. Yeah, they're all almost like uniformly 40-odd minutes.
And they had tangents as well. And the episodes were twice the... Like, at first, I thought you were talking about episode lengths. The episodes were twice the... as in the episodes of the show were twice the length. Get this, dude. Fucking hell. Were twice the length of Korra and 4 times the length of Steven Universe.
What's wrong with
Steven
us?
Universe was... Yeah, Steven... I'm right there, aren't I? Steven Universe was
10-minute episode, yeah.
Yeah. 10-minute episodes. Anyway, back to this. I assume have you got any other notes?
Just a couple of very small ones that I'll quickly go through. Welcome to the Disappointed Dad Club. Welcome to the I Disappoint Dad Club is one of my favourite Boomy lines maybe ever. Really enjoyed that. I've talked about Kaya figuring it out. I like Boomy Jr., or as it gets shortened to, Boomju. Boomju is now one of my favourite characters, officially. It's a great sequence. Very funny. What else? I had a few other notes, but I think a lot of these we've actually covered looking back through it. Yeah, no, I think we've actually done all this. So let's tell you what, Chris. Let's do the trivia.
Let's trim it up!
I'm going to give you very, very little trivia. This is the smallest amount of trivia I've ever done on this show, so I'm very sorry. Korra's narration of events that have occurred since Tenzin's vacation parallels Sokka's recollection of Team Avatar's journey in the Day of Black Sun Part 1.
Nice.
2 red automobiles, commonly used by the Triple Threat Triad, are parked outside Mako's apartment building.
Cool.
And that is it. Thank you.
Great trip, Dan. Great work this week, mate.
Yes. So
it's your fault.
So a little twist this week on feedback from last series, because actually we're not as ahead as we were when we did that series. So the first episode has now gone out, Chris. So it's feedback from this series. Hit it.
Well, don't think that's not getting an intro. Feedback from this season.
Hi, I'm Dan, and welcome to feedback from this season. Maybe I'll flick between the two because I probably still have a couple of things we haven't covered from the previous season, but this one just popped up in my feed, and I was like, look, you know what? Let's talk about this now while we can. So this is a YouTube comment that comes from Gurg. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Gurg. Girg.
I doubt it.
Gurg. Yeah, well, maybe it's unpronounceable on purpose. Who knows?
You might be.
Who knows? This person, who I think maybe has commented before, and maybe I've tried and failed to pronounce that correctly in the past. It seems familiar, but anyway, they said, "I've never heard of Christmas being a festival type thing. Is that a thing where you guys are from? Here, festival fair type things are done unrelated to any holidays." Now, I can't speak for Chris, but they do have Christmas festivals and Christmas fairs in the UK, and I suspect across Europe, but they're not exclusive to Christmas. They can be done. There are festivals and fairs, but I think what Chris was thinking of is not just that it's a fair or a festival, but it was the aesthetics of it, right? It was snowy, all the bright, Christmassy lights, the reds and greens and all that stuff.
Also, quite specifically, a Christmas market. It felt like a Christmas market, which we do have across the UK every year. There's food stalls and places where you can buy tat that you that you're probably not gonna, the recipient is probably not gonna enjoy. And the bigger ones in London, the Winter Wonderlands, have fun fairs and stuff like that. So I was thinking of specifically Christmas ones. Specifically Christmas markets and Winter Wonderlands. That sort of stuff, which is quite prevalent in across the UK in December.
And I think the Christmas came from a solstice, and their one was to do with the solstice in Korra. And again, when you combine that with the imagery of snow, which I know it was in the southern water tribe, so snow is a constant feature there. But when you combine the snow with the coloured hanging lights that were in those specific colours, it definitely invoked a Christmas vibe, even if that wasn't necessarily what they were going for. I think they probably were, though, right?
I think so. Yeah, they seemed it to me.
I'm looking at it now. I've brought it up, the image. Glacier Spirits Festival. It's got its own little wiki page. Yeah, that looks very Christmassy to me. Like, if you took that image and showed it to someone, I think they'd either think Christmas, or they might even think North Pole, like they're drawing like the North Pole at Christmas. Like all the little buildings have like colourful roofs. There's like all this like lanterns of those sort of reds and blues that you get on like a Christmas tree lights. I don't know. It feels that way to me. But maybe that is specific. Right in, dear listeners. Let us know. Did that give you guys Christmas vibes? Chris and I just insane. Wouldn't rule that out.
We're not adverse to that being the option.
No, that could very well be the what's going on. But yeah, I think that's everything for this week, Chris. How have we done? Oh, we've just hit an hour. I'll take it.
Yeah, I think that's fine. What's next? What's next episode called, my friend?
Well, so the next episode is called A New Spiritual Age. And we'll be doing that next week, of course, if you want to hear it right now. Actually, Chris, do you know what they can do if they want to hear it right now?
Tell me what they can do.
Absolutely nothing. Wait a week. No, I'm kidding. We have the Patreon. If you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify or some sort of podcast app of your choosing, the chances are that's just the normal RSS feed we put out into the world. But episodes of this podcast and our other podcast, Rewind Reviews, go up 1 week ahead of their release on those formats, on those platforms, on our Patreon. So for as little as $1 a month, you get access to that, and you can hear A New Spiritual Age right now. Of course, we always say, if you can't afford to, don't worry about it. We appreciate you just listening. That is support enough. But if you'd like to engage a little more and do more than that, but you're not quite ready to pony up some dough, it's a terrible phrase. It's a terrible, terrible phrase. But if you're not in a position to help us financially, you can support us in lots of other ways. Obviously, keeping listening is the main one. But of course, you can tell a friend. You can review us on the podcast platform of your choice, because that really does help us. It makes us more likely to be recommended and rise up on various charts. We have a real history of showing up on some really interesting charts in countries we did not know we were listened to in. We were recently in the charts in Vietnam, and that really threw me. It's very strange. Thank you. But
Yeah,
odd.
we were very much like, oh, who knew?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm happy. Like, I'm thrilled that it's the case. But I will admit, I primarily imagine that we're going to have success in English-speaking countries.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is, I don't think that's an unreasonable assumption. Do you know what I mean?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I think I'm right to be a little surprised when we chart in a country that doesn't primarily speak English. Really? Yeah. Cool, but really? Yeah. But yeah, thank you to everyone who listens in Vietnam. But yeah, so that proves the point though. If you review and you support by going onto your podcast app of choice and reviewing, liking, whatever format they have, every app seems to do it differently. You can tell that app that you enjoyed it, and that makes it more likely to share it with others, and that can help create more fun things like that. Do you live in a country that is not necessarily primarily English speaking? Please spread it there. I can't wait to see what weird countries we might chart in next. Weird in, again, that sense of not English speaking.
And let us know. Like, be like, oh yeah, that was me in the comments.
Yes,
like,
if you're listening from a country like Vietnam, we've had some as well from in the Philippines. I think there's a few we've had commenters. I believe Bianca is in the Philippines. I could be wrong. But I think so. So yeah, if a listener who I mentioned earlier. So yeah, so let us know in the comments below. Head over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/nothingButStaticUK. Find this episode, comment underneath, and tell us where you're listening from. I'm curious now. What's the spread? How far spread are we? Not just the UK and America, it seems. That's for sure. Certainly according to the tracking I have, which we love. So yeah, continue to support. Wherever.
Which podcast was that? Was that Analysing Avatar?
It might have been Steven University, to be fair, but right. This one has also popped up in weird like I think Analysing Avatar popped up in Chile. Oh, nice. On their charts. Very strange. Again, I don't expect it from countries that don't primarily have English as their first language, but keep going. Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, so I think have I covered all the stuff? I got very distracted by that. To be fair, I got distracted by that the day I saw it because I have email alerts for when we chart. That really threw me on the day, I must admit.
It's fine. No one listening to this, nor I, has been able to concentrate on anything else but the way you said Chile since you said it. So it's all good.
I used to work with someone from Chile, and they told me it was Chile, and then I decided that they might have been fucking with me. So I've included both here to protect myself.
Oh, that was fucking beautiful. Oh, mate, clip this out. Chuck it at the end of a Nothing But Static. This deserves to be heard by that. That deserves to be heard by that audience too, man. Okay, no.
Comment below. Was that person fucking with me?
Well, it's because we've had this discussion before, potentially on Nothing But Static. Mm-hmm. But I've always found it interesting that, like, the whole Gervais thing, and you were very much a Gervais, and then I've heard him say both, and like, yeah, as in Ricky Gervais. But yeah.
I think I've always said Gervais with an S, have I not? Pretty sure.
I thought when we were a bit younger, you would say Gervais. Or Ricky Gervais.
The thing is, we've done that thing now where we said the word too much to actually know what my natural way of saying it is. With overthinking.
Yes, but my comment was not whether you... Oh, no, maybe it was whether you had the S or not. I don't know. But yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because you said you very much were a Gervais guy or Gervais, and I'm not. Whichever one you settled on as being my one, I'm not sure is right, but it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. So yeah.
But it's like how you always find it funny how I pronounce remote box. which
Wait, what?
Which is
Oh, you call it a... Yeah, you do,
I'm
you
sure that
fucking
isn't that the
weirdo.
thing? Yeah, when I'm like, oh, can you pass me the box? And you're like, what the fuck are you talking? Like, it used to annoy you every time.
I've just had a quick look, Chris, out of curiosity for this podcast and what countries it's most popular in. So typically, United States, right at the top. It's an American show. Makes a lot of sense to me. And it's delightful to know that's our top for Analysing Avatar, since we spell analysing the English way, not the American way. So I'm glad you guys found us. Good stuff. You've learned how to misspell analysing from your perspective. Would you guess what the second country is, Chris?
Is it Chile?
No.
I don't know.
You might imagine it was the United Kingdom, the country we are based in and from. No, it's Germany.
Oh, wow. Oh,
So thank you to our German
Hello,
listeners.
Germany.
I didn't realise we had so many.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Also,
I've
then
just-
the United Kingdom, Canada, Denmark, Ireland, Australia, Netherlands, Brazil, Sri Lanka, thank you, Indonesia, Belgium, Sweden, Nigeria, Luxembourg. Thank you for those of you listening again. There's some fascinating countries in this list. Yeah. Indonesia, Australia, Egypt, Mexico. I'm not seeing... Actually, you know what? I'm not seeing Chile or Chile in this list, which makes me think maybe it wasn't Analysing Avatar that was on that. But we've got, like, Azerbaijan, Mongolia. Sorry, if you're listening from Mongolia, please do comment. Like, how did you find us?
And again,
Like,
thank you.
what search engine? in Indonesia, or like Saudi Arabia. Like, what search engine is suggesting this podcast in those countries? Do you know what I mean? I think that's more confusing.
Yeah.
You assume a search engine would filter out on a language basis alone, right? Who knows?
You'd assume.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you all very much for listening from around the world.
I've just Googled it and ended up at this whole remote box thing and ended up on a Reddit thread, and there are a lot of people like Clicker, Zapper.
Yeah.
Like, people have a lot of different names for the remote.
Yeah, they do. It's usually location based, I've found. I think box is very much like Middle England.
You think?
Yeah, I reckon
Maybe.
so. I reckon if you ask around, your mates probably call it that.
I will.
From your
I'll
sort of
ask.
your sort of quarter of the country, if that makes sense. I reckon that band right across the middle. I reckon that's box. We didn't call it that in Manchester, but I don't think they call it that in London either, which makes me think it's just that section.
That, and whether people have half and half at a curry place, you think that divides us?
Yeah. It is the true test
for
of
those
which part of this country you're from.
For those listening, half and half means half chips, half rice. Which, I'll be honest with you, is a thing I wish the South would adopt. It's a fucking great idea.
It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. How can I make a traditional Indian dish worse? I'm going to throw some chips in there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay, fair.
Yeah, it's an insane, insulting thing people do. If you're going to an Indian restaurant, get fucking rice. If I see someone with chips in an Indian restaurant, they're in trouble.
Yeah, I was thinking specifically of takeaway. I don't think anyone... Well, maybe people do it, order it in restaurants, but yeah, I was thinking, if you were getting a takeaway.
I still feel like you should get rice. Rice is great. Why wouldn't you have rice? Rice is like... Yeah, baffled. I'm always baffled when I hear people doing that. I don't think I've ever seen someone do it with my own eyes, but I know it happens. We've really got off on one.
Right.
We looked at this episode.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
We looked at the short episode and saw that as a challenge, clearly. So we're going to end it right here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We love you, as always. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And come back in a week's time when we sit down to review A New Spiritual Age.